Hello, everybody. So, got some kind of harsh news. If anybody was hoping for things to not escalate further in the Middle East, and as some of you may have heard, we were in warfare with a few different groups over there, and had a few attacks happen. But today we were lost 3 American service people, which, that's usually the beginning of the end as far as the United States justifying war and moving into a warfare mode. And so this is pretty bad news. Now, this isn't actually this video. Ironically, I think they picked the wrong video for this webpage, and this is USA Today. It's not funny, but it's funny that they picked the wrong video for this page. This title is "Drone Strike on U.S. Troops Shows How Service Members in Mideast Face Increasingly Lethal Attacks." Sort of buries the lead, as they say, because the first thing says, the attack that killed 3 U.S. troops and wounded 34 others Sunday at a base in the Middle East came from a one-way attack drone and represents the latest and increasingly lethal barrage aimed at bases with American troops in the region. So, I wonder if they already did a front-page story about this, and this is just an opinion, but sort of puts the news in the first paragraph instead of the headline. But this is a pattern. However, it's alarming. Of course, it's being spun in a context of like, look how vulnerable we are. We have to put more and more and more and more and more and more and more people and troops and tanks and guns and all sorts of stuff in all these places. Look how vulnerable we are. Like, not really, accounting for the fact that we're there still, in Iraq when we've been asked to leave. Jordan, where we were attacked today, is another story. That's basically a U.S. vassal state, as some might say. We have, permission to be there and stuff. But in Iraq, which is this is mentioned here, we don't anymore. They've been asking us to leave. In Syria and other places where we've been attacked, we're definitely not supposed to be there. We've been asked to leave. And there's, we just stick around for some reason. Iranian-backed militias have mounted more than 150 attacks since the 17th of October. This is all sort of related to the ongoing genocide of Gaza and, alleged genocide of Gaza. I'm going to say it is the fucking genocide of Gaza. And that we're not stopping. And the Houthis tried to take up arms against, just by stopping commercial vessels in their own strait. And so our response was to bomb them drop 50 bombs on them and start a whole thing. Now we're firing with them and doing exchanges on the open ocean, naval exchanges, and all sorts of stuff happening now. But this is going to happen if you're there. You've got the whole fleet there. You've got everybody there. It's quite the buildup. It looks like freaking literally Armageddon getting set up. And that I feel like that religious mythology is kind of set up to sort of justify this and make it seem inevitable, when actually it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy if all the people that believe this stuff are in charge of the biggest military in the history of the earth. If you think about it, that does sound pretty biblical. But hey, if you're in control of the narrative and you're in control of the supply, why not, right? Like, live out your fantasy. So 8 of the wounded were evacuated from Jordan for a high level of care. So it's jumped over again to this event after talking about the 17. This report is a mess, but I'm not one to critique because I'm a mess myself. They're in stable condition. occurred at a logistics support base in Jordan near the border with Syria. So definitely not the picture above. 350 people were based there. 3 died, we know. And the nation's heart is heavy following I give him a George W. Bush voice. Heart is heavy following the deadly attack, vowing that we will hold all those responsible at a time and in manner of our choosing. It doesn't sound in words like very George Bushy, but I confuse him and him a lot. Joe Biden is very Bush-like in policy. It's just amazing how they managed to move the Overton window so far to the right that the Democrats now appear in most ways the way that the Republicans used to. But that's late-stage capitalism for you and the death of empire, yada, yada, yada. Trying to maintain the thing, maintain the empire, maintain the hegemony. Should see how much money he took from defense contractors and Pfizer and all the people he seems to be doing work for. AIPAC, I think one of his biggest donors, and bent the knee, literally. Anyway, in recent weeks, the attacks have become more sophisticated, so things are accelerating. The Pentagon responded with airstrikes that targeted elements of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. So they're responding by launching attacks into Iran. Attacks on U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria, and they continue targeting. So you're basically the most recent empire trying to hold on to this critical area. Rome did. The Macedonians tried to. The Egyptians tried to, and just this is an area. Now it's tempting to say, oh well, they're always in conflict. Well, there's hundreds of years go by of relative peace, and then these empires come through and try to run it themselves, because it's some of the most. I mean, it's just the traversal area. It's like before the Suez Canal was there by sea. This is the biggest area that a lot of the trade routes would come through Africa and Asia and Europe, and it's this nexus. It's the crossing point of the world. So that's why it's so frequently changing hands. But that doesn't mean that the people there that live in this area, that have developed in this area over the millennia, are in any way, shape, or form always hostile to each other. Like, actually, that's a myth. There's huge portions of history where you get along just fine until, most recently was, Britain moving in and trying to control it themselves. And then that gave way to Israel, and Israel used to be Britain's baby, and then it was the world's baby, and then, Daddy Warbucks, old Uncle Sam, is basically just, come in and adopted the young sucker, the little whippersnapper. Hey there, Netanyahu, what you doing? He's over there in the sandbox. War crimes. So, and I don't think that all Israelis are bad people, and there's a lot of resistance going on. People there are standing up, and they won't say this on mainstream media, but they are doing big-time protests, and that's at their own risk, because they've made it illegal to question the logic of all of this. You're accused of terrorism and supporting rape and all this other stuff. So, got too far off the beaten path. So that with the context matters. They are talking about this. This has a real Gulf of Tonkin vibes to it. I'll just say that. And the Houthis and their backers, namely Iran, bear the responsibility for escalation. Their responsibility for stopping some ships to make sure that supplies weren't going to people committing a genocide. We now know plausibly committing a genocide in the ICJ, just leveling whole neighborhoods, 2,000-pound bombs. Doesn't matter. They're always saying, human shields, as if every single thing is there. But we now know from, videos of people talking about it, it's just a front. That's what they tell the rest of the world. Amidst each other, they're fully genocidal in thought and action. Not all of them, again, but the ones that are participating, and it's a huge number participating, and adults are forced to do a tour of military service, so they're civilians afterward. But are they really? Like, there's legitimately Palestinians within Palestine that good, at least half of them have never seen military service and want to have nothing to do with it, and are good people, truly innocent people. So that all needs to be considered. Now, I hate it. Sounds like I'm being biased, but and maybe right, but it's just I've looked into this for a long time, and I used to try to make things balanced in my mind and say, hey, both sides, but really, no, you just look at the history. It goes deep. Look a little bit into the history, and as I talked about in yesterday's broadcast, it goes back to 49 or earlier, actually, historically, the establishment of Israel has a lot of connection to the Nazis themselves and stuff. The creation of a Jewish state in the quote-unquote Holy Land, or to send them home, basically, kind of like how some racist people in the United States say that to black folks, or people from other countries, like, go home, and go back where you came from, kind of thing, was an active project by Zionist Nazis in Germany before the Holocaust, before they elected their other strategy. So I think a lot of the buildings in Tel Aviv and stuff were commissioned by actual Nazis. So that's the history. Look into it. So not that these. It's like I feel bad for the Jews in Israel that have been sold a lie, sold many lies, and that's why the vast majority of Jews, global Jews, are against this thing that's happening and don't live in Israel, because you ask them why, and how could you live there? I'm a peaceful person. You have to be either blind or crazy to live there, or really just not care about terrible things happening in your name and people being suppressed, and you don't see a lot of it. People don't see it because they have these walls and stuff like that. It's very, very much hidden, and they're very highly propagandized people in that state, and they so you could be said a lot of them are unwitting, but a lot of them also, when they go to the West Bank and stuff, they see and they meet people out in the world, the right-wing Israelis in the Likud party, that's their worst nightmare, is when kids grow up, they go to college, they learn things, and then you start questioning. So this is all in context. And so we have a dangerous situation where, these guys say it's dangerous because, we're vulnerable. We have a dangerous situation because we are supplying the vanguard for a highly racist, destructive, violent, genocidal activity, and we're going to be stuck with the bill. So Americans, wake up. You're going to be stuck with this. We're at the end of a dying empire unless we get control of this crazy Roman Senate and this crazy Roman emperor. So moving on here, a little bit more of the details about what is Tower 22, the site of the attack of U.S. troops in Jordan. and holds a strategically important location in Jordan. Here's the actual location. This thing. But it's good that, the base in Iraq being attacked, that adds some context to the whole thing, because we're not supposed to be in either location. Well, that location. And it's just, we have so many bases and so many people stationed here, or, people say to control it, because they just can't help themselves. They'll go crazy, and as soon as we'll pull out, the ISIS will come out and take over, and it's that may well be, but at the same time, you run a poll on all the reasons why people, in these countries hate the United States. Pretty sure top of the list is being bombed, being sanctioned, being starved to death, et cetera, et cetera. And if you don't think that there's going to be, retaliation for that, you've got another thing coming. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying it's like the sky is blue, clouds are white. People don't like being bombed. They might bomb you back. It's pretty basic stuff. Oh, well, we have to stop from doing that. Well, okay, if you want to be have your boot on the throat, right? But one thing, a lot of things could be much simpler if we learn de-escalate, right? That's what you do with two people are fighting and they literally have guns to each other's throats. If you know what you're doing, hopefully neither of them has to die, or you don't have to die as the de-escalator. But Tower 22 is near Al Tanf Garrison, which is located across the border in Syria, and which houses a small number of U.S. troops. Okay, this is confusing now. Al Tanf Garrison. All right, that's across the border in Syria. And why are we in Syria? Well, we're not really supposed to be, and they've asked us to leave. So, here's a little bit of context here. The U.S. holds upwards of 750 U.S. bases around the world. So how vulnerable are we? Well, an empire that's diffused throughout the world is very vulnerable. It has a lot of vulnerabilities, literally 750 vulnerabilities to be exact, and 173,000 troops deployed in 159 countries. Now imagine if we weren't trying to police the world and all that money were actually being spent on, I don't know, infrastructure, healthcare, education, the environment, etc. Things might be a little bit better. We might have some backlash. We might have to change the basis of our dollar because we've made that literally tied to debt and bloodshed. Our ability to back up our threats. The way they put it is full faith and might of the U.S. economy, but really that means also include the full faith, full might of the U.S. military. Our dollar is our dollar, and it is what we say it is because it is, or else. And you all just get to sign up for the system in the Bretton Woods Agreement, which we changed in the 1970s to suck, rather than being based on the gold standard, as they say. Basically came in and, hey, we control this thing, and I think that means that we should make it crap. And that I don't think anybody's really ever gotten that. However, we're getting to the end of this process. Everybody can see the writing on the wall. We're sprawled out everywhere. We've got all these vulnerabilities. It's common news that our cities are falling apart. We have this huge homeless thing. People can see these things more than the last people to see these things are the citizens of Rome that are living in Rome. Well, the actual citizens at low level see it, but the elites, the people in the Senate, they've told themselves these lies, these comforting lies about, hey, we're the best, we're going to make it, no matter what. And that's speaking from privilege and not having seen the face of this stuff. So talk to people that are expats or who live in other places, or who are diplomats and actually talk to people. And there's a lot of support for the United States out there, but less and less and less the longer we support a genocide. So there's we have 3 bases in Canada. Canada, like, they're peaceful. Why do we have a bunch of bases in Canada? The most we have over here, let's see, in Germany, Japan, South Korea, Italy, so that makes sense post World War II. But for better part of a century now, going on pushing 75 years, is it really absolutely necessary? Why do we have that many bases in Germany? Well, no, we basically conquered them, and we represent a big chunk of their military force, and they're our ally because they had to be. And they feel bad for being on the wrong side of World War II back then, and so we're still there. Why not? Hey, 120 bases in Japan, a lot in Australia, but like, why does the United States have so many bases everywhere? It's, I'd say, redundant. Look how many we have around. Oh, Haiti is covered in U.S. bases, all over Belize, Guatemala, all these really rich areas of traffic, Panama. Just basically everywhere we need to maintain a strategic stronghold over the flow of global capital, global goods. That's to supposedly support this world rule-based order. Stop saying international law because we broke the law so many times. But so we can't say that anymore. But this is to maintain everything. And anybody that basically questioned this, they're an adversary, possible and suspicious. Shoot, we have bases in China, right? So, and or not, yeah. That might be Hong Kong, right there. But there's troops stationed in China, according to this map. Not very many, but still some. Not nearly as many as the rest of them. So it's just really, it's interesting that we say our vulnerability, when in fact we're occupying the globe. So some more context for you there. And this says, Syria says Donald Trump stealing its oil after U.S. company makes deal to drill. Now we, obviously the president isn't Donald Trump anymore, but this deal and this situation is ongoing. Like, that didn't change when Joe Biden got in. It just changed hands. There's nothing about this has been altered. But when this happened, it kind of flew under the radar. And it was said to be Chinese or Putin propaganda, but since then it's Syria actually saying these things. Go figure the spin, right? Syria has accused President Donald Trump of stealing the country's oil after U.S. officials confirmed that a U.S. company has been allowed to operate there in fields under the control of a Pentagon-backed militia. So these private security groups, right? Those are a whole other ball of wax. Could get into, but basically a lot of the wars are being fought not by by the U.S. military itself, but government defense contractors. I'm going to say that in Dr. Evil voice. Defense contractors. Private armies, basically. So that we don't have to officially declare war, and we can just avoid the scrutiny of the American public by and large. Because if it's not our boys, they're just these guys with a job. They're just doing a job, folks. And no, it's not a war. What are you talking about war? We're not occupying the world. We're not stealing their oil. We're not just stealing it against their will. And with occupying forces that are just there in somebody else's country, because they can defend themselves militarily, that's preposterous. In remarks delivered Tuesday and sent to Newsweek by the Syrian Permanent Mission to the United Nations, Representative Bashar al-Jafari told the UN Security Council that the U.S. occupation forces, in full view of the United Nations and the international community, took a new step to plunder Syria's natural resources, including Syrian oil and gas, through this recent establishment of a company called Crescent Delta Energy. This firm, with the sponsorship and support of the U.S. administration, has entered into a contract with the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces SDF militia, an agent of the U.S. occupation forces in northeastern Syria, with the aim of stealing Syrian oil and depriving the Syrian state and Syrian people of the basic revenues necessary to improve the humanitarian situation, provide for the livelihood needs and reconstruction, he added. Now, I'm going to say Bashar al-Assad, not a great guy, probably, but at the same time, these are leaders of their own country, and as if the U.S. hasn't ever lied about the actions of people they don't like and who want to depose, like weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein. Sorry, it's a weird cough. Like, I don't know what's up with that. I might have the vid. So, yeah, it's pretty obvious what's happening, and Trump's response, as you know, in Syria we're almost down to nothing, except we kept the oil. We'll work out some kind of deal with the Kurds on that, but we kept the oil. So, he said, we diplomatically left, but there's some people there still controlling the oil for our sake, and we're keeping the oil, and that means we're going to stay there and keep pumping it out and moving it out. Through military convoys and so forth. It's fucking ridiculous. Yeah, interesting. So that's the context, and these are the throes of a dying giant in the final stages of late-stage capitalism. So, and maybe a little bit of undergirding here. I just wanted to throw this in at the end, that the Fed's Powell and Treasury's Yellen are deathly afraid, and they could be about to accidentally trigger a huge Bitcoin and crypto price earthquake. Put the Bitcoin and crypto stuff to the side. This is about the strength of the dollar, and the fact that they've driven inflation so high with wars and famine and just general insanity, really, really low rates for such a long time, out of order. I think they started. Yeah, after the great financial crisis, but the good times just kept rolling, and then they kept rates extremely low until inflation was extremely high, and then all of a sudden threw on the brakes and raised rates. Now, a lot of people, and inflation still hasn't really come down despite the fact that they've done this. It's it's been a year or two, and the numbers have come down relative to the numbers before, but that's not lowering prices, and it's didn't take away the inflation. It's just relatively stopped it. So then we just move into a new era of high prices, and the whole approach of we better stop the money flow and stop people reduce hiring, reduce employment, and basically make the country starve and be poor again so they can't afford these goods, as a way of taking care of your own mistakes that you made, on purpose, basically, to keep your rich banker friends in the job. And by the way, who was ever actually, sent to jail or anything for doing criminal things to the economy? Bernie Madoff, maybe was it, but I think most people even kept their jobs. In fact, a lot of those people got richer. And these are the guys that ruined the economy, stole grandma's house, all of that. So, that's the reason a lot of Americans today we're in a really rough situation in rentals. Why the home ownership of black people, which was starting to recover, was so drastically reduced. Why the home ownership across the board was drastically reduced. Why a lot of people then moved into rentals and then into cheaper rentals, and a lot of them are now homeless because the end of this cycle is that you've taken the wealth from the people and moved it into the banks and the richest 1 more like 0.01 or less percent. It's this obscene process. But they're raising the rates until it bounces back again and they break something again. So they set up this bank term funding program in order to allow banks to borrow their own money back from the Fed for a second to avoid the problems caused by the fact that the rates were raised so quickly and they were caught, basically swimming without a swimsuit on, but the tide went out. And I think, Silicon Valley Bank and a few of these others were going belly up, and we thought, hey, they're for sure going to lower the rates again, or at least try to get some balance and eat their crow and try something else instead of this extremely harsh tactic. There's probably a bunch of ways in which we could lower, change inflation, but then they say, oh, you can't do price fixing, you can't do communism, you can't do socialism, you can't do any number of these different things that actually lower prices, use the power of antitrust and force monopolies to stop, talk about price fixing. The monopolies and the corporations are price fixing. So you just stop the wheeling and dealing there, and the way that they have this vice grip of control on prices, the price of labor and the price of goods both. Just let them have anything less than the fullest, utmost amount of power. I think this is a big recipe for, at the end of this, the biggest risk, is that the U.S. dollar just isn't what we say it's worth anymore, and that process every year is bolstered usually by the purchase of treasury bills internationally, so if we lose face on the world stage for all these various reasons, not being able to take care of our own domestic needs, and plus literally shipping almost $4 billion to a state that's committing genocide, may soon be found in The Hague to be committing genocide, plausibly is committing genocide, and all of the bombs say made in the United States, plus we're doing all this stuff. How much longer is it before they just stop? We have BRICS and we have these other organizations around the world, and people just sick of it. They're not having it anymore. And at the very least, they might stop buying our useless IOUs. There's a thought. Now, these are dangerous thoughts, but if you want to protect yourself, I would say that you should be hedging your bets against the dollar, which is basically a calculated measure of our military might and acumen, as they say. It's the epitome of the empire. The dollar is the empire. The empire is the dollar. So if you don't think that this empire is going to last, at least in the way that we say it is, to the extent that we say it is universally across the whole world, which is the juice of it. Plus, that's tied to Saudi Arabia and their oil supply, which they're probably not so happy about this. The people are not so happy about this. And that was before this deliberate thing. They were just, things were fraying as it was. Biden couldn't even get, a meeting, I think, with Mohammed bin Salman, and MBS did a fist bump with Putin. Whatever you have to think about Putin, and things are not going America's way in all the ways that they think it should be, right? And we're just kind of not really. It seemed like we're sleepwalking off this cliff. Anyway, it's all food for thought, and I appreciate you sticking around with me through all of this. And it's interesting times we live in, as that Chinese curse said. May you live to be see interesting times. Anyway, if you like the vibe, like and subscribe. Peace out. Thanks, y'all. Bye.